Where's the other one? There. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Louis B. Free Radio Show, Brain Food from the Heartland. We're going to be talking about this book, The Lord of Night, a Shadow Bruja novel. I have New York Times bestselling author J.C. Cervantes on with me this morning. Good morning to you.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm well. I'm delighted to have you. And I've got so many questions I want to ask you. So
Sure.
let me ask you, just tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would.
Yeah, so you can also call me Jen. I write under JC. I was born and raised in San Diego, California. I now live in the Land of Enchantment with my family. I of Mexican descent and grew up with so many incredible tales and stories that were told to me by my mom and my grandmother. And those have really inspired and fueled so much of my passion for the stories that I tell today.
When did you starting the writing process for you? What was it like?
Um,
Go ahead.
so
Sorry.
So no, that's okay. So I've always been a storyteller, and I didn't consider myself a writer per se. I come from an oral storytelling tradition, and I was always telling stories as a kid, and I was a voracious reader. I was a very early reader, and I couldn't get enough of
Yeah.
words. I mean, they just really fueled my imagination in powerful ways, and it just felt like, wow, you can create entire worlds through story. Like this is such a powerful force. And I went on with my life. I didn't ever consider writing fiction, and I went off to school. And it wasn't until I was in graduate school and I was working on a master's degree in rhetoric, actually. I'd never
Rhetoric.
taken a fiction. Yeah,
I
I'd
didn't
never
even know
taken
that
a fiction
existed.
class. Yeah, so I know how to argue really well. Yay. Um, and my youngest daughter came to me. I have three daughters, and she came to me and she said, "Hey, will you write me a story when I'm at school today?" And I said, "Sure." And I put pen to paper. And, I always, I tell the story, and it's such, it feels like such hyperbole, but it felt like the heavens opened and the angels started to sing. I felt like something really connected to a deeper part of myself in such a powerful way that I realized, oh my gosh, I love this process. And so my story that I was working on for her kept growing and growing and growing. And it got to the point where I realized I was probably writing a novel. And so my initial goal was just, oh my gosh, I just want to finish this. And so, from a natural storytelling perspective, because we're all wired for story, I realized I was making natural chapter breaks, and I was writing chapter hooks, and I was developing this character. And it was just because I had read so much that I had this narrative form in my mind. And that ended up becoming my first book.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's incredible that your daughter asked if you'd write a story for her that day. And
Yeah,
like you said,
yeah,
like the heavens opened up
yeah.
and you were doing it like chapters just like naturally.
hmm And so I often say that, I didn't find writing, writing found me.
I love that. I am absolutely blown away by that. And I really appreciate you sharing, seriously,
Sure.
sharing the stories is absolutely beautiful. Three Spoiled Dogs.
Yes, through very spoiled dogs.
I saw that in your bio. I love that. And by the way, folks, you can go to the website, jccervantes.com. And we've got those links up at louisfreeshow.com, louisbfree, wfmj.com, etc. You know where. So let's talk about The Lords of Night, a Shadow Bruja novel. The process for you, because you had the trilogy. You tell us. I'm being too wordy, JC.
No, no, you're not. You're
You're
not at all.
my audience wants to hear you, not me.
So I have to go all the way back. The idea for the Stormrunner series came with a what if question. All my stories come with what if question. I'm a very blessed writer in that I don't go looking for ideas. They kind of haunt me until I write them down. So I have too many to count. But we have some dormant volcanoes in New Mexico. And one day I was out on the Portal and I'm watching the beautiful sunset and I'm looking at this dormant volcano and I'm thinking, what if something really dark and horrible lived in that volcano? And what if there was this young boy who lived out near this volcano? And what if this, so I started going down this kind of rabbit hole and it just really grabbed hold of me. So 3 books in, I write this trilogy, enjoyed every single moment of it. And when Ren, who is the star of The Lords of Night, which came out yesterday, when she appeared on the page in The Firekeeper, the second book in the trilogy, I knew that she was an important figure, but I didn't know who she was yet. I had to wait for her to tell me. So by the time The Shadow Crosser ends, which is the third book in the trilogy, I knew that she had her own story to tell. I knew that there was too much going on in her mind and her heart, and that she had too much history that I still wanted to explore that I didn't get to explore because she wasn't the protagonist. And so I went to Disney and I said, hey, what do you think about this idea? I really need to find out what happens to Ren. And so that's why I wrote The Lords of Night.
That when you say that you were waiting for her to tell you,
Mm-hmm.
I love that when I hear that. That's how I want to say that's how they take on a life of their own.
Oh, absolutely. Early on in my career, I would try to control the characters, and it was always a disaster because I would think, oh, no, you can't say that. You can't act like that. What's wrong with you? And now I let my characters have free reign, and they do the wildest and craziest things and say the wildest and craziest things, but I let them breathe. And so I have to wait for them, truly. And for any writers out there, what I'm talking about. I can't force my will upon them.
And I love when you say that because I first heard that from a novelist years ago who said they'll tell me I wouldn't do that. What are you writing?
Yeah.
Basically, what are you writing that for? I wouldn't do
Yeah.
that. And that just blows my mind, honestly. See, that just blows my mind.
Yeah.
And you've yeah, obviously it's. I mean, you heard stories. You read a lot. Voracious reader. I love that when you said in your bio at J.C. Cervantes, sorry, a lifetime collection of books. Let me just tell you, wait till you get my age and the lifetime collection, which I'm trying to wean down because I don't want people to have to do that for me. When you say that about again developing, does it seem? And again, I don't want to imply that it's not work. It's certainly
Mhm.
you've got to
Mhm.
focus. You've got to sit down. You can't just see it in your head and not write
Right.
it down, obviously. But do you think there's almost like and forgive me, I don't want this, like a natural, like this is what you were born to do,
Mhm.
being able to,
Mhm.
am I making any sense?
No, absolutely. And that's, I think that's a perfect way to put it. It did not feel like a career, but a calling. And, there
Oh,
were years
yeah.
of rejection. And I remember thinking, I wish I didn't have this compulsion to write these stories. And it felt cruel in some ways because I didn't know how not to create story and not to make that a part of my life. And yes, I can still do that, but I wanted an audience. I wanted to share my stories with the world. And so, that's the commerce part of it. So there's that artistic form, but then there's this commercial part of it that is sometimes it's a difficult, threshold to cross as an artist. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I believe in destiny, I believe in fate, and I think that I was absolutely destined to continue to tell stories for the rest of my life.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And of course, the new book, which, as you said, just released yesterday, The Lords of Night, a Shadow Bruja novel. And I know you got to go in a couple of minutes. I've got a couple of quick questions. The
Sure.
Bruja, the witch. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Renata Santiago, when she came on to the page in The Firekeeper, she had this innate ability to control shadows. And so there was on in one part of her lineage, she was connected to these brujos, okay? And so she had these magical elements. And I cannot tell you the other part of her lineage because then I will ruin the spoilers in the book, but
Yeah.
she has another part of a lineage that links her to the gods. And so she's the most powerful of all the God-born kids, those who have gods or goddesses for parents. And so that was a lot of fun to play with. I love playing with the magical elements,
Yeah,
and seeing how far I can take it.
the Aztec of the mind. Again, I've got to mention the a dedication for all the girls who are told no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we live in a world where, I mean, let's face it, it's a patriarchal system, and I think that women since the beginning of time have had their challenges and battles, as all humans have, but I think in a really profound way. And as someone who is raising three daughters and teaching them how to navigate the world, in a powerful way, but in a compassionate way, it's really challenging. And so I was told no a lot, growing up, and girls can't do that, and girls don't do that, and girls act like this, and girls are supposed to do this. And there were all these supposed tos that I think really shaped me in ways that I found myself pushing against, as I got older and my more natural personality came out. And I decided I'm going to be myself. I don't need to follow these rules and
Yeah.
these structures that are set forth by, sorry, men.
That's
And
maybe
and so I
not
wanted
this
to
man,
dedicate
maybe
this
not
book because
this man, but I love that. I love your energy and your personality also.
thank
Again,
you.
Lords of Night available everywhere and everywhere online. Please try to buy it as close to home as possible. I know you've got another gig to do in a minute. Thank you so much, JC.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. Have a great
Loved this.
day.
Thank you. You also.
Bye bye.